appropriated in the appropriate fund consistent with the services provided.
He's been in the building fund for the past 2 years.
The sheriff's department contract?
Building codes compliant officer?
We have one, but we have additional support from the sheriff's office to provide to provide code compliance. So the individual that you're referencing there, that's Holden. That's our code compliance officer.
Right. And I think in addition to that, I've taken out an amount to compensate for that additional position, but I'll check that.
Is there any other questions?
I guess my feeling is, you know, if it's paying for itself, I have no issues with it at all. And it sounds like it will definitely be paying for itself, you know, so. And that's the bottom line, and I've said that since I've been on this commission, you know. If it be the building, the parks, the parking, whoever it may be, you know, if they need additional people and the job they're doing brings in the revenue to compensate for that, I have no issue at all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on the subject? All right, now we have the 2019 operating budget request.
Okay, so we just finished the building fund. If we can have the fire chief.
What page?
He is page.
Get in the hot seat.
Here we go. He is starts on page 44.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I think you've already probably had a chance to look over the presented budget there for the fire department. You don't see a whole lot of changes in this presentation over what was in here for the previous year. No increase in any staffing levels. We did increase staffing last year by 1 with our fire inspector position. And that seems to be working out very well for us. We're in the process of evaluating exactly what that's going to mean to us as far as our revenues are concerned. But other than that, the fire department is pretty stable at this time. Questions, comments?
I don't see Clover on here.
We haven't got Clover a line item yet. We're very fortunate. I spoke with the city manager this morning and said we're actually getting a lot of donations for Clover for her upkeep and medical expenses. The community has been absolutely fantastic. The lady who's doing the training was here today to do some follow-up training with her, and she'll be back every week to do training, and she's donating all of her time, which is fantastic. And I wish I knew that lady's name off the top of my head. I would tell you what it was. One of the local veterinarian services here in town is also donating all of her care. We have to pay for the actual medications that she's receiving and the shots and things, but everything else they've donated to us. We're getting people who are donating money to the Clover Fund. So it's really nice, and we're actually kicking off a fundraiser with T-shirts for starting the first of the month. So Clover's doing very well. So.
Can you hire more employees like that?
I would like to train more employees like that. So she's
We'll get
doing,
rumors for them. Good.
The kind the public takes care of. Health care, everything.
The best story was that the chief can tell you about her latest press she received. I thought it was pretty fascinating that they invited her.
It's just her story that's making her so appealing to everyone. We actually had a call from the, I believe it was a Mike Calta show, which is a radio show. And they said, we want your dog on the show. So one of the guys who were assigned to Clover actually took Clover to the show. I said, that's a radio show. They can't see her. I said, did she bark or anything? No, they just wanted to hear the Clover story and get some information about what we're doing with Clover for the community. So she's getting a lot of really good coverage out there, even on the radio, so,
That's great.
yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 47,
Yes, ma'am.
down at the position changes summary, this budget does not include 3 additional firefighter paramedic positions to staff that QRV that, well, I know it might be purchased, I know it's not a done deal, but
Right.
I thought I thought the purpose of it was to use it instead of a fire truck to keep down on the maintenance and all of that from the fire truck. And therefore, I guess I don't understand why we wouldn't use existing staff.
Right. The whole process is a very convoluted thing, and I'll try to give you a snapshot of what's happening with that. First off, we have a minimum staffing of 3 personnel, and that's our primary response and focus is fire suppression. Everything else is pretty much secondary to our operations, whether we're talking about medical rescue calls or water service operations or anything like that. Our primary focus is on fire suppression. So we have to maintain that 3-person staffing on that engine for fire suppression by Pinellas County standards and by our ISO standards, which brings me to where it gets complicated. The ISO has recently changed part of their standard. We're currently at a classification of a 2, which is a very good classification for our community. They're now saying that you have to have a minimum staffing of 4 on a first response apparatus. And that can come from anybody from multiple stations as long as they belong to one department. Well, our department only has the single station. So the question becomes, where do we come up with that additional personnel? So we're talking about this quick response rescue unit. So if we increased our staffing level by 3 personnel, 1 on each shift, that would actually give us 5-person staffing. So that when we had a full shift, we'd have 5 people on duty. If there was a medical emergency, then 2 of those guys would take our quick response unit and respond out for medical alarms. That's where on that one sheet that you have there, it says our statistics, our evaluation says that about 71% of our calls could be handled by that quick response unit, thereby saving a lot of the expense for larger fire apparatus. The other process where it really gets sticky here is we're looking at Pinellas County is building a fire station in the Reddington communities. We currently, as you know, split that fire service contract 2 ways between us and Seminole. There's actually an EMS component that's also figured in there. What we're trying to do, the city manager and I are trying to figure out how we're going to be able to staff that unit up there and make it workable for all of us. What we're looking to do is to purchase that quick response vehicle, which will be probably an F-250 4-wheel drive unit for quick response coverage, in a way that we can fund those additional units without it costing additional revenue to the city, or that the cost would be equitable and even across the board between us and the Reddington communities. So, and that's why that additional staffing level has not been increased, because we're trying to figure out and nail down what exactly is going to happen with the Reddington contracts and with the Reddington Fire Service collectively within those 3 communities.
So Chief, the salaries and wages don't include these 3 possible people that you're gonna hire, correct?
That's correct.
So right now, you're at $1 million in salaries,
Yes, sir.
okay?
And by the way, those salaries have been calculated at a 3% increase and not at the 2.1. We wanted to keep that the same, but not knowing what the contract would be.
Second question, line number 4610, the increase of 138% or $25,000. When I flip over, it kind of tells me nothing. It says, it says $600 and miscellaneous $5,500. What is that telling me? Line number 4610.
4610, under maintenance of,
Yeah, the maintenance building.
And your question is the miscellaneous?
Maintenance.
Well, what's the 600? I mean, why, where are we going with this? I don't understand.
These are just maintenance agreements. Is there any, I saw this in another area as well, and it just said maintenance, and it was maintenance contracts for air conditioners, da-da-da. But the thing is, when are we gonna start addressing building maintenance? Instead of, these are maintenance contracts.
This says building maintenance, so
That
that's why I'm asking.
I know, but the things in it, the AC, alarms, bay doors,
Right. Those
All
are
that,
not-
that is not building maintenance, you know, not
Well, those are
like
maintenance,
this maintenance in here.
this is maintenance service contracts. Those are the things
Right.
we have to maintain, but it doesn't do anything
No, I
for,
understand that.
okay.
But it's building maintenance, I'm wondering, because I don't know if you all are running into the same problem over there, the rust we have over here, the rust that's at the rec center. Do y'all have rust too?
Not like we do over here. We had other issues over there. We actually had a slab of concrete that was actually sinking, and they
heard
actually
about that,
covered that underneath the previous contract and elevated that up and re-poured all of that concrete out there. But part of this is also an expansion joint out there that's given us an issue, and we're having a difficult time exactly quantifying who's going to fix that and how much that cost is going to be. So we're having some maintenance issues over there as well.
So I think we need to have an inventory of all of our properties and get a general idea of what the maintenance is, because there is nothing to help with that area. We have nothing.
We have, when we go through some of the other budget items, we have put some money aside for perpetual care for some of our buildings. I think it's $50,000 that we've set aside for the municipal complex, but also there's some capital projects that we need to address over at the fire department as well. On the driveway, when they exit the station, that is asphalt, and since we have such a heavy piece of apparatus, and this would happen in any fire operation when you have vehicles such as ours, the asphalt is not capable of holding the weight of that vehicle. So what's probably going to have to happen is we're going to have to go in there and put a concrete apron at least halfway down the driveway to effectively cure that issue. So there's some capital projects on the horizon that that we're looking at. We're actually going to go and see if the contractor will effectively cure that issue, because that's something from a design perspective that those things weigh more than some small aircraft, and they need to be, you know, they should have, in most situations you see fire stations do have a complete concrete driveway reinforced with rebar until they hit the asphalt, and then they can get on the roadway to provide service. So there's some things that we're looking at putting in the budget and preparing for, but we do have $50,000 that is set aside for a maintenance fund per se for the city hall and fire campus, and departments are looking at putting money aside for regular repair and maintenance.
What about Rex Place? Are they gonna concrete that too?
That once they get out on the regular drive, it's not something, that vehicle, that fire truck is sitting on that asphalt in some cases for a good amount of duration, where they're doing exercises or they're rolling out, so it's consistent wear and tear, and then the elevation of it makes it that much more difficult because it's on a slope, so it's natural, the topography, it's going to wear away, and so you won't experience that on some of your side streets or those types of things, but directly coming out of your bay in your fire department, you will get a lot more wear and tear.
Where is the truck? I don't see it in the budget for 19.
Which truck were you referring to?
truck was purchased out.
No, not the ladder truck.
The
The
quick response.
QRV? It's gonna come out of local option sales tax money,
Okay.
so, yes, ma'am.
The estimated cost of that is about 50, right?
About 56,000.
And that will save the.
Chief O'Neill,
Yes, ma'am.
out of, if you look on page 45, it's just a little bit of history, and I had it circled for something, but if you'll go down to 5,200 uniforms,
Yes, ma'am.
why was it so much this year?
Okay, I can address that question.
Thank
That-
you.
That's basically $40,000 that we received in a state grant for bunker gear.
That's correct.
For
And
what?
for bunker gear.
Oh, bumper gear.
The turnout gear that the
turnout
firefighters
gear.
wear.
Just curious.
Yeah, it's quite expensive, but yeah, we got that originally through grant money, and this is part of that money being paid back.
And you talk about paperwork and following up grants, that, and you well know this, it took a lot of work to do that.
Okay, but that was an expenditure, so we're, so it wasn't grant money, it was our part of the grant money. right?
The initial purchase was on grant money. This was actually after the grant, wasn't it? Is that correct, Walt?
Yeah, that was,
The grant money would-
that's the expenditure of the
Revenue,
grant money.
right.
Yeah, so you have to book it, as a revenue when you
Right.
receive it, and then expend it as a, so you have to show the revenue, so it will show in part of the budget.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, thank you. Just curious. Part of grant.
All right.
One last question.
Yes,
Chief,
sir.
When do you anticipate the hiring the 3 other people, and, I mean, what's your timeline at this point?
It's all about timing at this point. You're absolutely correct. What we're gonna do is we're gonna try to get that QRV online. That's gonna give us enough time to process the Reddington grant monies and try to figure out exactly what's happening. Because there's money's spent 3 ways out of that grant funding. There's Pinellas County EMS grant money that's currently going to Pinellas Suncoast. And then there's the fire money that is split between ourselves and Seminole. Now, before we hire any personnel, we're gonna make sure that we've got those grant funding secured and we've got a plan together that will put that process in place, not only for this year, but for long into the future. If we're gonna hire additional personnel, we've got a commitment to their employment long-term, and that's what we're gonna try to lock down in this next contract.
So you were saying basically the grants will pay their salaries and there won't be any additional on your salaries?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
No other questions?
All right. Thank you,
Madam
Chief.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
We can have our planning and zoning director. And it will be page, let's see.
Page 20.
City manager. What
Good
page are we
afternoon.
on? What page are we on, Walt?
Page 20?
It says city manager's office.
It's
Page 21.
22, and
Okay.
It's
21.
21
21 is a summary,
and 22.
yes.
Yep.
The, any changes, one simple way of looking at things, of course, is to look at the percentage of change, and some of those look like really gigantic changes, I'll admit. But that's due to the fact that we've added a position, so a number of those line items, like the cell phone doubles, because now we have 2 people. And we had to request some supplies for creating a new station for that position, a computer station. And then also travel and training will go up because we have to keep credentials up. And then the other changes are things like postage and printing and things associated with producing documents and having public hearings. There are 2 changes that we talk about making when we've talked about this before. One is that we have a public hearing process coming up where we want to go out into the community to do a lot of the long-range planning and design hearings and things like that. That's going to require a lot of notice, so that budget had to go up. Then additionally, we've just amended the site plan process, all of which is going to involve public hearings and, again, mailing and postings. So we'll be producing a lot more paper, really, just many more documents. And every time we have an additional hearing or out into the community, we have also notice. Now, some of that will come back to us because those who are in the site plan process will pay for their own postage and advertising costs. So we expect to get a lot of that back in. But those expenses that we incur due to the overall community planning process is a city expense. there any questions?
Actually, that revenue would go into licenses and permits when we
Right.
get it.
Okay. Frank's department used to be under here, correct?
I don't know if Frank's department was ever entirely under here. We have situations where part of my salary was coming out of the building fund.
Yeah, this year, and I think Frank alluded to a little bit of it, half of Linda's salary was being paid out of the building fund, and half of her administrative assistant. After an analysis, we determined that that percentage is more of 10% each of them, instead of the 50 that it was, that we put it.
I guess, I mean, my question comes down to, you know, you're showing a 42% decrease in expenses.
The reason for that is, and Linda, I pointed it to Linda, it deals with the FEMA flood mitigation program expenditure
Right,
at the bottom of the page.
right, and we have funds that we set aside for that in anticipation of having to pay out the mitigation grants, and then we get reimbursed for it, but we have to have the cash to pay those out. And so the amount that we've got in there is reduced because we aren't doing as many of those projects. We're starting to wrap up, we just have a few left. So we sat down and estimated what we thought we would be pulling out of that.
So that 500,000 would actually mirror or be the same as on the revenue side,
Same as against it?
same as on the revenue side.
Okay.
So it actually, the year before was a little ambitious of a figure. That was 1.3 million. We only brought in a little over 600,000. So
as we, as the city gets the impact fees together, then the revenue will go up also, correct?
Yes, it'll have to go directly into paying whatever impact it was assessed for. For instance, if it's in recreation funds or it's in fire funds, it'll have to go directly back into those budgets. It won't really show as a community development income.
And it would only be utilized to mitigate the impact. So if we collected a recreation impact and because of a development, we added 2 new parks and recreation employees, you can pull from the recreation impact if you can say that because of this development or what have you, you needed those additional personnel. But the funds are very restrictive, and you have to have the legal nexus to be able to say, okay, we can pull for that funding from the stream. So it's very specific and restrictive as to what you can utilize impact fees for.
It is a little confusing because
Yeah.
the impact fees are addressed in the planning documents, and your capital improvements plan comes through the planning process, but the funds don't actually go in there.
not only that, you almost set up 2 accounts for each one of those because you have to give 50% back to the county.
I guess my question is, you know, with things that are being built right now, like Airfoot Beach and the other one across by
Madeira Bay.
Fish House, and then with Holton Project and Carnes' project, you know, this is going to create the need for additional police, possibly, the need for additional fire, possibly, with all these things. Does the impact fee, can you pull money for those things that we can show, hey, we need an additional police officer? Or, you know, or the chief comes in and says, I need an additional firefighter, you know, to staff appropriately. You know, I guess I'm having a hard time because I'm not seeing anything that's saying what we can use it for and what we cannot use it for.
Okay, the impact fees, when we get them in place, one of the reasons we haven't been able to collect them is that the land use plan doesn't specify what impacts we would be collecting on. We need to make sure that all of our level of service standards would reflect the real impact of new development, and that it all has to be done by comp plan amendment and policy. Then, based on that, we set up a program where we begin collecting for every new development as it comes in. But we do have to do it in that order, and that's the reason you haven't been able to collect up to this point, is that we have to actually reassess what all our impacts and needs are, adopt those, and then also adopt policy that specifically says under what circumstances and what procedure will we use to collect the impact fees.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm very ignorant in this arena, but it looks to me by like the time that we get this all settled, that we can start charging impact fees.
We're built out.
Yeah, we're already built out, and most of the big buildings are done, and we're not gonna collect crap. It's just wrong somewhere along the line. And
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that it wasn't already in there. It's a pretty massive undertaking to go back through the whole plan. And as much time as we've tried to set aside for that, just operations day to day haven't allowed us to create a whole new analysis. And that's what's going to be needed in order to collect that data.
It is a shame, because right up the street, Indian Shores, where I worked, we collected close to 150,000 the year that I was there. And of course, we gave 50% of that back to the county, but
that's still 75,000 that you got.
Right,
And
right.
that's my issue. Right now, all the infrastructure fees that are happening, when these projects, like the two places that are in the process right now being built, that's all going on the back of the taxpayers, the homeowners and stuff like that. And to me, that's just wrong, so.
It's totally wrong.
Well, it's way more than just two projects that are under the development, but have other communities, have we checked into, can other communities have put a moratorium, a stop on approving projects until we put that in place?
Yes, you can do
I mean,
that.
Yeah.
I've seen it done before.
I have too, and I would think that, if they want to come here, then they have to understand that we got to get our act together, or we have not done this and we need to do this, because just like Commissioner Dothert says, that's what I keep thinking. Golly bum, by the time we get it done, we'll be totally built out, we won't even need it. Not totally built out, but, for large projects. So is that something that perhaps the commission should consider? Or is that just pie in the sky?
As far as a moratorium, my concern is that you've effectively, in some cases, have entered into development agreements and arrangements with private sector entities to allow for them to develop their project, and placing a moratorium on them, they can argue it's placing a financial undue hardship, and you can find yourself back in a courtroom. One of the things, and planning and zoning director, correct me if I'm wrong, is there any way, since we have to go through a PUD on some of these things, that we can effectively, in those arrangements, have something whereby as part of the agreement, not that we have a impact fee per se, but require that the developer address some of the infrastructure or issues that we have associated with the development as a part of the arrangement with the city, because to go through a comp plan process and to get us to where we have the basis is going to be at least a year.
Yes, and in fact, with the town center, as an example, there was a section in there that dealt with transportation impacts. It didn't deal with any of the other impacts, but there was a section dealing with transportation impact, and it required that they make roadway improvements and be credited for their impact with the investment that they made into those improvements. And it's one way that that's commonly done with large developments that have big roadway impacts. So yes, when you enter into a PD, you're entering into a very specific development agreement, and the whole purpose in going through that is that you make sure you get everything that you need, and maybe even something special. Otherwise, you would just hold everybody to standard zoning. So that is an option, yes.
Then should we as a commission consider talking about that at one of our workshops? Would everybody like to do that? Or
we do have a development update item on
Yeah.
the next workshop agenda. So that would be a good
Maybe that
time
would
to
be a
add that
perfect
in.
opportunity
Yeah.
to bring it up, because when I was thinking about that, when we were mentioning different projects, every day when I walk by, for instance, the Barefoot Beach, it's lovely, it's gonna be lovely and everything, but boy, they have really torn up that alleyway.
Yes.
I mean, that alleyway is shredded,
Yeah, they are
and
gonna
it
have
was
to make-
never shredded
they-
before.
They are gonna have to make improvements on that. They have to actually redo the roadway back there.
Okay,
So-
I mean, for months, last year, I used to go by there and tell the young man that was there, I said, when are y'all gonna fill these potholes in, you know? Oh, we didn't do that. I said, we
Yeah.
most certainly did. You know, I mean, that was a year ago, probably, you know, I mean.
Right.
And I was just curious, I mean, that is their responsibility, really, to put it back to where it,
Yes.
I'm sure that's gonna be, because they're gonna be using it to drive underneath the other building, you know, you don't think they want the potholes, don't think they're gonna come back to us and want us to do it.
well, somebody has filled in some potholes, I
Yeah,
don't know.
they'll
who.
always say it wasn't them.
But I don't mean filling in potholes, because those potholes have already got holes in them. I'm just saying that something
Yeah.
has to be done.
Well, and I think to the department director's points is that with a PD, you as the policymakers have a great opportunity to restructure the arrangement to make sure that the interests of the community are always considered as part of the development. And most developers prefer to go through that process because they get to, in essence, horse trade and say, okay, well, this is what we're asking of you. And the board can say, well, effectively, this is what we're asking of you to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a situation where you accomplish your project and then we don't get any improvements to the surrounding area, and then we have to come back a year down the road and ask the board for monies to go in there and improve roadways. So, you know, in the department director's development update, we can talk about how we can, in essence, shift the relationship to be more mutually beneficial, but then continuously make the progress that we need to make to amend the comp plan and to go through the process to have impact fees. So those are just, long overdue, and we need to do that.
Have the impact fees always been based on the same criteria? Because, and the reason I ask that is because 9 or 10 years ago, or maybe it was even longer than that, we had it in Madeira Beach, we thought we had it to where any new development on Gulf Boulevard, for instance, was really going to be charged with the responsibility of undergrounding their own portion, new developments on Gulf Boulevard, okay? And that was such a neat idea, you know, what a great way of getting Gulf Boulevard undergrounding paid for by the people that certainly are going to, I mean, they didn't want the power lines, you know, in front of their, you know, condos. And I thought that was a great idea, and that was never done to any of the new developments. So has the criteria, I guess my question back is the criteria of what impact fees are now the same as they were 10 years ago?
I think they might be listed in that 2009 SAP that was done.
Oh,
Yeah, the impact fees have to come out of your comp plan and any
Okay.
special overlay,
I see.
like the SAP, yes. So
okay.
I haven't looked at the one from 10 years ago to know specifically what they were at that time, but it has to be related to levels of service that you establish for each of the areas in your comprehensive plan. So all facilities, you have to list them all out in your capital improvements element.
That's probably something that we need to address.
Oh, yeah, the
readdress.
whole comp plan needs to be addressed, and that's really critically part of how you make the community function by use of the plan.
2 questions. Number 1, you said if they make an improvement, they're credited. What do you mean?
Typically, for transportation impacts, if they have a certain number of trips that they're going to generate, and that is going to require any changes to the roadway, that instead of giving the money to the local government and then making the local government pay for the improvements, sometimes what you do is you say, well, this is what the improvements are going to cost. Make the developer put in the improvements, make the changes. And then the amount that they spend on those changes is credited towards what they owed for the impact fee.
So if you tell them we want you to fix this roadway, then we tell them what level or what we exactly want.
Yes,
And, and they fix it and it costs X dollars to take that away. Okay.
correct.
That
And
was not-
some of those are probably going to be larger roadways. For the most part, impacts are going to be assessed on state and county roadways. If you have a collector or something larger locally, you can also have those listed. So in our transportation or mobility element, we will list out every roadway and what level of service we want it to be functioning as. And anybody that comes in and alters that would have to pay an impact towards, a fee towards whatever impact they were creating on those listed roadways.
Okay. And, Mr. City Manager, you made the comment that if we take and say, okay, you can't build till we figure this out, and they've already got a contract, they can come back on us. It's kind of the comment you just made, correct? But when, like, and I'm going to use the Carnes project, the judge, Sariarty, ruled that they didn't submit everything when they did their building plan, So, they've still got things to submit, so is that holding that? I guess it's a fine line in there, and I guess I'm trying to figure this all out in regards to, the impact fees and all this kind of stuff.
Specific to that project, the department director has reached out, planning and zoning director has reached out to a land use attorney. And so they're doing a conflict search to basically make sure that there is no conflicts with anyone associated with this project. And since there is so many folks that are involved in that process, that conflict search takes a little bit. As soon as that conflict search comes back clear, that's when we're going to furnish all the information as far as what the judge's orders is, what the agreements call for, and then that's when we're going to have a conversation with the board specifically to the arrangement. It's a lot of moving parts and a lot of intricacies to it, but we are going to have it reviewed to see, okay, can we do X, can we not do X, and if not, why? And so we're moving in that vein to be able to provide the board some clarification on that arrangement and how do we move forward to the city. But based on the information that I have is that they have effectively complied, well, there's an order for them to meet what the judge says on the site plans and those types of things. So we're going to adhere to that and have somebody else look at it and provide us some perspective on it.
I just want to finish by saying I want to applaud, Linda and the whole city staff for the job they're trying to do to get us on the right track, which I feel we haven't been on for a while, to start doing these things it takes care of the citizens, the residents, even the businesses, because they pay the taxes too, so to get all this, taken care of, I think is very important. So thank you.
Ditto.
All right. We can have a recreation director.
Oh, what page? What page?
We only have one more.
I just saw it too.
54.
54?
You got it.
Cutting into my nap.
How late are we staying? How late are we staying?
If I could just mention one thing about this budget before we start. We actually had two staff members that were charged to the Archibald Fund in the previous year, and we costed them to the rec center, which they report to, but we also did a transfer to cover their cost from Archibald back to the general fund. So you'll see where there's some increases in the salaries, and that's how we took care of that that thing on that issue. What we actually did is on page, where that transfer is, but we did do a transfer from Archibald to the general fund. It doesn't show up in the rec center, but it shows up in the general fund revenue as funds covering those two employees.
Those two totally work in the ball fields? They don't go anywhere else?
A large percentage of the time in the ball fields, but I mean, we work throughout as needed.
Where else?
I mean, they're in the parks as needed whenever. I mean,
Do they go to John's Pass?
we've been to John's Pass for events.
They cannot go to John's Pass. Either that or you can't pay for them 100% out of Archibald. Archibald can only be used for recreation and parks.
And that's what,
John's
their
Pass is not a
recreation,
park.
their recreation employees. And when we have events down there, rentals.
How about John's Pass Village?
Okay, correct.
They cannot work in John's Pass Village, is what I'm saying.
We handle events that take place in John's Pass.
Events aren't parks or recreation.
Okay.
You didn't give me that.
I'm just telling you how it's a deed restricted park,
We can add it back in.
and the funds are
We can
very
add it in.
deed restricted. That's the problem, and that was the problem in having 3 people in there now. And we haven't really gone over Archibald, but they got a whole person in there now, and I'm wondering where they work. So there's another, that's another story on another day, in another department, so.
How many out of the events that happen at John's Pass Village, how many events are we talking that staff is over there providing assistance?
I mean, the events that take place in the past are the Seafood Festival and the Wild West Tournament. We have occasional other minute things. I mean, if it's as simple as earmarking that individual or those 2 individuals to stay out of the pass, that's not a problem. We utilize the park, Archibald Park, for rentals of the pavilion, the movie nights, any sort of 5K or activity there. And that staff member assists.
The 5K, I've fought for many years because the 5K was technically illegal to have in Archibald Park. Because Archibald Park and the snack shack and everything there is for people that go to the beach and access there. The 5K really doesn't, bike ride down the beach that irritates everybody, but that's another story on another day too.
Well, the bike no longer occurs, and the 5K hasn't taken place down there since, in 2, if not 3 years.
That's a good thing.
And we understood that working with those businesses over there and, the chair vendors and the snack shack, we have wonderful relationships with them when we understand if we are causing a burden, then we don't need to be there. And that's just the realistic nature of everything we do. So that's why we moved it down to the pass. It's bringing more people to the pass, more people to that parking lot, a lot of other opportunities. So as far as that goes, staffing wise, the number does look inflated due to what he said, but we have not asked for any sort of increase in staff. We're operating under the same number that we were last year. So, as far as that goes. Going down the operating expenses, I highlighted, again, when we talked about our narratives, efficiencies is one of my number 1 goals. If you look at, for example, scorekeepers, we've reduced 70%. Instructors, we've reduced. Temporary services is
I have a
reduced.
question about the instructors. Why are we paying instructors?
We have to book the revenue, and then the expense, so we have to book the transaction. That's an accounting thing.
So we're not paying them to show up. They have the class, for example, the Zumba
You guys
classes.
collect the money?
Yes, ma'am. We collect the money, then we
And then
pay
you turn around and
them
give them a
out.
percentage back probably? Something
Yes.
like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Where is that recorded as income? Because I don't see it. I'm just curious.
Revenue?
It's booked as a revenue.
It's
and-
activity registration,
Yeah.
Okay.
and that number as
And where is that?
That is on this little special sheet that Walt gave me earlier that gives me all the revenue.
That none of us have.
So he's gonna get a better one by
okay.
the end of the week.
Oh, yes,
Or I'll
he
make
did
you a
mention
copy of this one.
Yeah, when I did the general fund, I just summarized that. I will be breaking that out
Great.
the next time around when you get these corrections, corrected documents.
Okay, continuing travel and training last year, we've decreased that quite a bit. We had 2 staff members that were attending college last year as additional education. We do not have any staff this year that is interested in doing that, but we do plan on other certifications on the basic child care certifications and recommendations. Rentals and leases is another one, decreased. Promotions and public relations has decreased by 5,000. I do know there was a lot of contention with that last year. I actually put together a marketing plan with actual expenditures of intent with that. It's not just a pool of money to spend when we have it. It's to market the city. I can furnish that with what we are basically wrote out on it with myself and one of our newest staff members as far as our marketing plan. And with the addition of the new PIO, I want to make sure that we ensure that our goals down at the rec center of the promotion of the center and activities in the city align with the information that he's interested in putting out. So, and then the senior programming is the only one that I have put in for an increase this year. And then $100 additional for gasoline and oil. But the senior program, I actually went and looked up that number. I wrote it down here. 99 members in that, 37 of which live in Madeira Beach. We utilize that program, and every single dollar, and again, the revenue is an activity registration for that as well. That's the other side of the revenue.
Does that go in that activity account as well?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. And the way that works is every single member, I'll take you back to when there used to be the $2,000 to the club. We found out 2 years ago that we were running 2 programs simultaneously with each other that had similar interests. It was the rec center trying to do something good for the community and not really realizing that they had that going on. We did have discussion with them. They were more interested in the activities and less interested in running the group and making phone calls and purchases and all that stuff. So what we've done is essentially they pay their membership to us for the year, and then each trip or each, meetings are free, but each trip is, there is a fee attached to it. A member has a fee, a resident has a fee, a non-resident has a fee. It's all, the member fee and the resident fee is the same. So we do have people that participate as residents and non-residents that are not members. So that's kind of, that 37 out of 99 is misleading. We have more people that participate than are actual members. If we do, say, a bus trip to the dog tracks, they pay a fee to get on the bus. And if there is a fee on the trip, say it's a $5 entry fee somewhere, we will pay that, but it is built into the fee that they charge to get onto the bus. So every single thing that we do has some sort of participation fee attached to it. It may look to them like they're getting a benefit for the $15, which they are. They're getting these meetings. And for example, when we have a meeting here, we'll feed 60 of them, but we'll go to Aloha to Go and we'll get food donated. We expel every ounce of energy to get this food donated before we spend the money out of the budget. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a way we can get a breakout of that? I'd like to know if it breaks even, where it's at.
Sure.
And I'd like to know on Zumba and all of them, so I guess everything that's gonna go into the activity. I'm just trying to figure out why, and I was trying to do it last year and it got real convoluted, and you probably remember some of it. Why is the rec center budget, not over $900,000, it would bring in less than 4? And I'm trying to understand what is going on and what's causing that to do it. Because it's always bothered me.
And I'm not, simply put, a lot of the things that we do, you see these maintenance grounds and parks, we spend $38,000 out there, and, the gas and tires and oil and all that stuff is because we're mowing grass, and we're doing, grass doesn't produce revenue. If we could find out how it could, the ball fields produce revenue, that grass does, so there's a lot of maintenance costs and a lot of, just
I understand that, but Archibald Park should take care of a lot of that. The parking fund can support taking care of the park grounds. So, I mean, it's just a different thought process, I guess.
No, I understand, I mean, yeah, I understand
And I
that.
see you finally put some money in maintenance. Are y'all gonna get the rust taken care of out there on the poles? Is that what that's
We've had
for?
it was painted over last time, I believe. I'm not making that
Y'all
up.
use kills.
Yeah, well, no, I don't, we had somebody else do it, we didn't paint it, but, and, you know, we talk about the maintenance, generally, we paint the inside of the rec center every year. You know, we've got kids in there and we've got rentals in there, so they're,
Well, you more than doubled your budget.
for
from
which
last
one?
year. Building maintenance. Now, it's, you know, instead of $7,000, it's $18,000, but it's just,
It was 18,000 last year too, yeah.
yeah, I guess it was. But you just,
And that had a lot to do with the, you know, again, there's maintenance contracts, we do have, the AC contract, there are others that account for that.
I'm with you.
And then let's see, departmental supply, I did increase the departmental supplies as well. That's another, you know, if we're gonna paint, it's coming out of departmental supplies, we're looking for different, you know, things like that, so. But the thing to note on that is the number that we were looking at was 415,000, came in at 386, so an efficiency of $30,000 just going through the budget process and looking at our projections, is something that I would continue to do. And, you know, and that's gonna be the continual goal of the rec center, so.
And Madam Mayor, one of the things that I've asked the recreation director to do is to look at his peer agencies throughout the county and see where their numbers are with respect to revenues and expenditures, because I will promise you that the numbers that we return are far, far better than a lot of agencies, smaller and 2 or 3 times the size, because recreation, like the director said, is a very costly endeavor. However, there's economic studies that I can provide that are in the Harvard Business Review that talk about the economic value of parks and amenities and recreations throughout the community, because they really hit on the quality of life. And so there is, you know, that delicate balance, but we are going to bring you actual information from accredited recreation agencies that are the benchmarks throughout the country by the National Parks and Recreation Association, so you can see where their numbers are. And considering that we don't have a parks function in that department, when you look specifically, if they did have a parks function, that number would be even more problematic. So considering that they're returning 30 to 40 cents on the dollar, I think when we compare ourselves to the national agencies and the state agencies, we've made some substantial strides. Now we can continue to get better, and we can look at, you know, better costing and those kind of things, but recreation is a costly proposition.
I had a couple questions. Can we take a look at the Archibald Fund, like Commissioner Oakley was saying, and figure out which things we can pull out of here and put over under the Archibald Fund? You know, I'm just looking at one, the electric for the ball fields. We should be able to pull that 34,000 out and put it over the Archibald Fund. Do you understand what?
Yeah, I understand, absolutely.
Yeah, it keeps it from coming out of the general fund.
Right. I think we just really need to look at
Yeah.
what our left and right boundaries are with the Archibald Fund and kind of adjust these expenses accordingly. That's number one. Number two, and Walt, this is going to go to you. And looking back at every department so far, our Social Security has gone up higher, not higher than the salaries have gone up. You know, are we getting an increase on Social Security that we have got to pay? Has that gone up? And number two is the group insurance has gone up in every department. And I know we haven't got our numbers yet.
What I did I'll have to look at the Social Security, I don't know what's there. I mean, maybe it's overtime. But I did increase the health insurance by 10% across the board, because we had to have some type of cushion in there. We hope it's not going to be that much. On Friday of this week, we get the health insurance numbers from our insurance agent, and I'm going down to Naples to try to get that personally and ask them some questions, because it's important. But we did increase that by 10%, and I actually did that last year too.
But the Rex department's increased by a third, from 60 to 90,000 for the group insurance.
Right.
So that's more than 10%. It's, you know, it looks like it was 61.3 from last year, and 17, 18, you have the numbers reversed, and then almost 90,000, 89.5 for 19.
All right.
That's a third increase. That is one hell of an increase on our
Well,
insurance.
again, we also.
46%.
Well, one other thing is, we also went up, now it won't be that much, but we also had an increase for dental. So the health, it's not just for the health, it's the health, dental, and the disability insurance. So all of those three are in that health insurance line.
That increased a third, you know, from 60 to 90.
It shouldn't be that much, but,
We'll have to audit the numbers.
right.
Yeah.
It just seems
I
way
have
out
some
of line.
thoughts on that, but I didn't know if you want, can we go over it now? It's in line with what Commissioner Dothert said. Has nothing to do with rec department per se, it's just with all of the health insurance, the category on each one of the departments. And I was thinking about a lot too, and it's not with regards just to rec, it's everybody. Does the city pay 100% of the employee cost for health, dental, long-term disability and life?
Yes.
Do they pay 100% for that entire package? Because what I was thinking of, we started the conversation last time we met, I believe, in one of our workshops, and we're discussing the possibility of changing that and having the employee buy in. I don't know of any city, I don't know of any company at all that the employee doesn't have to participate in some sort of paying the premium on even on their own cost, okay? But I was thinking if we didn't want to, if we didn't want to go down that path, is there a possibility then of still talking about having the employee pay the dental, life, and long-term disability portion? Because those really are optional type benefits. Normally, the dental is a small cap, an
Well,
annual, you know.
that's another,
life.
city manager mentioned that maybe during, if employees take a different health insurance option, and that's a savings, then maybe there can be some give on those other areas, yeah.
'Cause
By the way, I just want to say one thing. On the salaries look inflated for the rec center, because again, I included 2 employees in there, and that weren't in there in the previous year. On the last page, I'm actually backing them out, and it's $100,000 transfer for those 2 employees. So on the last page of the rec center, I think it's page 57, no, 58, no, 59 actually. At the bottom, I'm transferring 109,000, and again, we're taking the cost of 2 positions, that 109,000 is in the salaries. It's included in there. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking it out and having that's a transfer from Archibald to the general fund. Doesn't show up in this rec center at all. Now, this is the first year we're doing that, so it's gonna look kind of weird, and I commented it looked kind of weird, but that's the way we're proposing it.
You know, I guess I'm asking to look at the Archibald Fund. So, you know, I know a lot of the residents get upset when they see you spent $950,000 to make $300,000, or whatever the numbers are, okay? You know, where if we back these out, I'm not trying to hide it from the residents, but I would like to put it where they.
You're getting income from a parking lot and a concession stand and chairs to cover the cost, to offset costs at the rec center.
Right.
And that's not
Or
right either.
recreation.
Right, that's
And their
what we should be
programming.
doing.
Right, no, I agree.
That's not fair either.
Yeah, it is.
That's the way the Archibald Fund is set up, and it's my
Right.
understanding.
Archibald it can only be spent on things like that. You can't use it for to go do stormwater or something. It can't just go to the general fund and go.
It's got to be something to do with parks and
Yeah.
recreation.
We
But I mean, that's a good
will,
offset.
to the previous comment about the insurance and the benefits for the employees and compensation and all that, we have an item that we're going to be bringing before the board that's going to look at all those things. That's going to look at what the proposals that the board asked us to do some research. That's going to bring you what the health care benefit is and looks like and some potential modifications. And then even looking at retirement, what that system looks like, how does it work, how does it function, those types of things. So the board can get a full package of what the benefits for an employee is, because you can't necessarily, you can't make a determination just based on wages, because there's all those other ancillary benefits. So we're bringing you the entire picture, and then we can drill down specifically and look at some options, because we are looking at making some improvements, but also things that are sustainable. To pay, almost $800 a month per employee per month is very rich. And I think there's some plan design elements where we can still offer a quality health plan, but reduce the costs and actually share in some of the cost savings. A lot of communities have gone to a high deductible health plan with a health savings account and have reduced their costs, by 30-40%. So with the healthcare industry and so many unknowns and so many variables, we just want to look at that and get some perspectives, but actually provide you real-time information. So when you're making a decision, it's not based on what the finance director has put as just a plug number to hold the revenue, hold the budget, so we can, for budgeting exercise purposes, but you can actually see if it's 3% or 5% and know where we stand. Some agencies have said they're drawing a line in the proverbial sand, and anything over and above this, employees are going to have to take a different type of plan that fits within that, or any additional costs they're going to have to share in some of the costs. And
I think we need to know, healthcare wise, what our neighbors are doing. What's Treasure Island doing? And the Reddingtons, St. Pete Beach.
Treasure Island's in the same pool
Yeah.
that we are.
Yeah. But their plan designs can be different though. And that's one of the things we got to look at, because they can be in the same pool, but they can offer exclusively a high deductible health plan, and they can be paying.
That is true, because our increase last year was 3%. They had, from what I heard, was like around 8 or 9.
So it all depends on plan design. And by plan design, we can make changes and modifications to still offer healthcare and save in the end run. And a lot of cities are looking at healthcare because it is, in most cases, the largest single line item in your budget in some cases, for your workforce. So we're going to bring that entire package. It's going to have health insurance, it's going to have retirement, it's going to have salary and wages, those things, so we can have that big discussion on those items. So that's already scheduled for a workshop, I believe, in July, if I'm not mistaken.
When, what we asked for, and I guess Walt's working on, is it at the page at the end or whatever, total telephone, cell phone expense. Can we also do a line for total healthcare expense? I think that needs to be in there, and I think we'll all take our heart medicine before we look at that.
Yeah, actually, on the next go-around, when we get new, fresh documents like this, I will try to have those totals.
Give us a heads up so we take our heart medicine beforehand.
And for the healthcare, we'll show you what the aggregate number is. Here's the entire healthcare, here's the entire payroll, because like we said earlier, if you give a raise, you also have the other side of what the contribution of retirement is that goes up. So we want to make sure we're looking at the entire picture, so you as policymakers can make an informed decision to say, okay, we're comfortable with this, and these are things that we're not comfortable with, and staff go back and make some changes or modifications.
Thank you.
Are we planning on doing a survey of the other cities? Are we planning on doing a survey of the other cities?
We have reached out to the other cities on their compensation, and we'll get the other health insurance information as well, because we participate in a consortium so we can get that information.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing I wanted to bring to the attention, the capital outlay, we do have a vehicle up for replacement next year. We actually have a current one that's up for replacement as well this current budget year. We are sitting on both of those, or at least the one now, waiting on that lease option. We're driving a 2005 Ford pickup truck and a 2007 Ford. So we're at the 13 years and 11 years on those. Driving in and around town and getting, transferring dirt and sand and all that stuff of the field. So it is something I would like us to look at once we do have the lease option, but at this time, we're sitting and waiting, dealing with what we've got, so.
So the price you got on here is for purchase, not for lease, correct?
Correct.
The way it stands now.
Correct.
And if I were to purchase one of them, it would come well below that, but again, with the lease option and the way we've talked about that, I feel obviously that's much more feasible. Yeah.
Jay, thank you for the good work.
Thank you, Jay.
Oh,
Thank you
I have
all.
one question here. The rec center is making a contribution or paying to join the Tampa Bay Beaches Chamber of Commerce. I just noticed that.
Oh, I missed that. Where did you see that?
Page 58,
Line 5420.
page 58.
Sorry.
That just needs to come out of, that's my mistake on the filling out that information. A staff member that was previously on the staff, those were her yearly dues for that
Oh, okay.
partnership.
So that's done?
Yes, ma'am.
That's out.
That's, I believe that's, well, if it's being done, it'll be the city manager's offices. But we still have day-to-day conversations with them. To speak on the chambers, we do provide them information on events and activities throughout the city. It's one of our membership benefits. I don't know where part of their
Both of them
pricing
or one of
structure.
them?
Sorry?
Both of them?
We have communication with both of them all the time, so.
Okay.
I just, depending on the conversation, or I don't know the pricing structure as to where that benefit is with their newsletter and everything else, but I do know that's one of the benefits that is coming out of that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Does the board wish to have the finance, because the departments that are left are finance, the manager, and public works, we can schedule that for the subsequent budget session, or we can?
Archibald?
Well, yeah, that's part of public works is,
Later.
Later.
okay.
What's your pleasure, Mr. City Manager?
I serve at the pleasure of the board, so whatever you guys want to do, we can certainly bring it back.
Do we have a consensus
No, we
then?
haven't done Archibald.
No, we
When are
No, we just hit on some of the surface stuff on Archibald. We're going to dig into that as part of the presentation with Public Works, Finance, and the manager's office.
So when is our next?
Next Tuesday, we really would
Yeah,
like to talk.
next Tuesday.
We would like to talk about capital and, I've taken the liberty of going forward with some of that, and I've talked to Al Carrier a little bit more, and definitely want to talk about the stormwater projects that we're looking at and possibly committed to in the next 5 years. Al ranked those, I think 1 through 5, and we at least want to address the first 2 over the next 5 years.
And
then
to the
we'll
finance
include-
director's point, we've had some conversations with the engineer of record and just confirming with some discussions with Public Works, but we wanted to share the CIP with the board and get your perspective so we can go ahead and include that in the budget document. So that will be Tuesday on the workshop. We'll discuss those items.
Okay, so we're going to do all the items already shown on the workshop.
Correct.
agenda, And plus the, okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just want to kind of say, I might be late for Tuesday's workshop because taking my brother, he's having he had deep brain stimulation, and I'm going to turn that on Tuesday.
Okay.
And that's at 10 o'clock over in Tampa, so I don't know how long we're going to be there. But I will make it as soon as we can get back.
Okay, thanks.
It's at 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock.
I mean, that's what I showed you. We want to
Yeah,
change it.
we can, if it's the pleasure of the board, we can certainly, make some changes and modifications to that. That's fine.
That we'll need it.
So you want to make it
Or
later?
else we'll never get
Are we
through with
talking
all
about
of it.
starting at 1?
I thought we were starting,
At 2?
2 o'clock.
Yeah, it says at 2 here.
so you're saying we want to start at 3?
No, I'm thinking at 1.
No, but I thought John wouldn't be back in time.
Oh, that's
I
right.
would just, whatever time you guys are gonna start, I'll try to, make it as quick as I can, it depends on how long.
You just want to start earlier regardless.
Right. 'Cause it's gonna be
I
a
think
lot
if we're
longer. It's
adding
gonna
the
be till
3 items.
4:30 again.
Okay.
Yeah, I just think if we're adding those 3
So
items,
they need to
plus we got
repost the flyer,
So,
Okay.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
1 o'clock
So you're gonna
next
start,
Tuesday. Got it.
so you're gonna start off with finishing this up, so, okay,
Yes,
I won't
sir.
be missing as much as from the workshop,
Right.
okay?
Yep.
So the consensus then is 1 o'clock next Tuesday,
Right.
26th. And there's no staff here now, but I just want to say thank you for the staff for what they've done so far and their presentations. And then we'll look
We
forward to the
appreciate
rest.
Right,
All right.
definitely.
All right,
Thank you.
it's 4:34 and we are adjourned.